It's my pleasure to introduce Paul McLeod, Director of Analytics at Simpleview. Paul is Simpleview's Director of Analytics, focusing on business intelligence and data insights. He and his team analyze traffic patterns on client websites and provide insight and recommendations on planner and consumer activity recorded in client CRM systems. Paul earned a double degree in economics and English writing from the University of Oklahoma and holds a master's in business administration from the University of Arizona. He joined the Simpleview team in 2011 as a CEO specialist. The furthest he has traveled from his home so far is Tromsø, Norway. Today, we will uncover the transformative potential of data in understanding visitor behavior and shaping marketing initiatives. Through real-world case studies, we will learn how destinations have harnessed the power of data to enrich visitor experiences and optimize marketing endeavors. In this webinar, Paul will give actionable tips on leveraging analytic tools, setting measurable goals, and effectively implementing data-driven marketing strategies. Now, I'll hand it over to Paul.
Thank you, Elsie. Really appreciate it. I'm just going to be really going through a bunch of different ways that we can, measure DMO performance these days with different data sources and talk about some of the pros and cons in each. I'm going to be honest, this is not like a comprehensive view of all the different ways to measure DMO performance because there is no such thing, I think, most of all. There are a lot of new things that have come up, a lot of new data sets, a lot of new techniques and things that we all talk about, but nobody, certainly in this industry, has a perfect exact view of being able to measure how the different things that we do as destination marketers or managers turn into actual people visiting our destinations, staying in hotels or other places to stay and spending in our economies. But there are various things we can do, and we'll just be sort of going through a number of those today, like I said. So feel free to jump in at any time with questions. I have empowered Elsie to interrupt me with any of those questions if they come through. I'll be happy to address them as I go. So feel free to get in there. But yeah, let's get into it. So what is the essential problem? And, honestly, I think in the TTRA, we do a lot of research. Obviously, there's a lot of academic stuff that is very geared towards even understanding things just from a being interesting perspective. But I think it's useful to start any sort of discussion about all these data sources and all these ways to measure our activities with an understanding of what exactly the real world things are that we're trying to do. And I think that's important because a lot of times people get obsessed with numbers and metrics, or they just, tend to start thinking about them as numbers rather than as reflections of real world realities that we're actually trying to affect. So with that in mind, I think it's good to just get really basic. So DMOs, whether they're marketing organizations or management organizations for destinations, either way, ultimately they're trying to do a number of things, but one of the main things they're all trying to do is attract visitors, right? We want people to come to the destination, spend time there, go to sleep in a place they have to pay money for, and do other things that improve the economy of the destination. So how do they do this? In terms of what DMOs actually day-to-day do, obviously many things. There's a lot of politics. But in terms of tangible outputs that DMOs are doing to do this goal, there are things like advertising campaigns, be that traditional media or digital, which have you. Destination development, actually making the destination a better place to visit, a more attractive place to visit, a place that is more efficient at handling the visitors that it does get. These are all really important things, and obviously that's, especially in the last few years, become a much bigger deal. And then event sales and coordination. That's obviously a huge thing for many DMOs. It varies from this destination to that, how much of the DMO's business is, meetings, conventions, conferences, what have you, sales and coordination on all those sort of things, providing services to planners. But these are the real world activities that somebody in the DMO is waking up each day, clocking in, getting done and then, going home and complaining to their boyfriend or girlfriend about because everybody complains about their job at the end of the day. Although working for this industry is pretty good, if you ask me. We said still a job. So that's what DMOs are actually doing, right? They're putting out advertising, they're working on the destination, they're hand-holding people or helping people through the process of planning and conducting meetings. So the people that we're trying to reach, travelers, be they leisure travelers or visitors for a convention or whatever, they do various things, right? Out there, they're planning trips, they're daydreaming about trips before they even get to the planning phase, and then they're actually researching things that they might really actually do or are going to do, and they're doing bookings. So in the process of all that, they consume campaign material, those advertising campaigns that DMOs and others are putting out, whether that be in attractions or even online travel agencies, that sort of thing. They're considering events, they're talking to friends and family. There are lots of different ways that they decide where to go, when to do it, what to do once they're there, obviously, is the point. You will notice that some of these things are things that the DMO might be doing. The DMO is developing the destination to try to attract them. It's putting out ads. But a lot of the ways that people choose where to travel have absolutely nothing to do with DMO activities. Just as an example, in a few weeks, I'm going to visit Vancouver. And the reason I decided to do that is I have, it is beautiful and an awesome place to go visit. But the main reason I picked it is I have a friend who lives there and I can stay with them for very cheap and have a good guide and companion while hanging out in that city. Honestly, the DMO didn't have anything to do with my decision to have a long vacation there in Vancouver, and maybe they don't even care since I'm one of these visiting friends and relatives people, not contributing to the overnight lodging economy. So I apologize. Yeah, the DMO, may have had some subtle background influence there by making Vancouver a better place to visit, or maybe getting some campaign material out in front of me that I don't even remember that influenced me. But honestly, it was a decision based on factors the DMO has nothing to do with. But other people do make decisions based on factors the DMOs have something to do with. So my point is, it's not just DMO activities that lead to traveler decisions. Two, in the third column here, actually become visitors, where they may book on OTAs or direct with different properties. And they may or may not have been influenced or assisted by the DMO in the kind of way I just described. So that's what we're actually doing, right? I haven't even talked about numbers yet. We're just talking about the actual things that a DMO is doing, the actual things that visitors or potential visitors are doing, and then the eventual outcome we want, which is for a good proportion of those people considering our destinations to really truly become visitors. All right, that's the real world reality. Any good measure, any good data that will help us make decisions about those real world things we're doing will accurately reflect that real world reality. And if it doesn't, we will need to understand that so that we can use that data correctly. So in that sense, that's what we're actually trying to do. With data, there are a couple of different things we can improve our organizations by doing. One is optimizing operations. So that is, as you're doing something, as you're, let's say, planning a digital marketing campaign, and you put it out there, you can review data before the process from other similar campaigns you've run in the past, or from just the current state of your digital activity, your digital engagement with your audience. So you can use that to sort of identify areas you could hope to improve with a campaign or something like that, or identify KPIs, baseline KPIs so that you can look for improvement afterwards. And then after, or as you place the campaign, as it's going, as you're analyzing it afterwards to find out how to do things the next time around, having good data is critical for understanding whether the campaign actually did what you want, whether it is, even if we can't measure the actual dollars spent in your community from a given campaign all the time, and we'll talk about some ways to kind of get close. But even if you can't do that, you can look at, intermediate steps, like are people coming to the website? Are they referring to partners from this campaign? Things like that. So without good operational data, there's no way that you can say you're doing the best job you could be of advertising your destination, promoting it in other ways. Then communicating to stakeholders is the other one. So this is, when you're using data to optimize your operations, that's like somebody internal, whether it be an actual practitioner or a manager of that person, looking at data, breaking it down, maybe getting very deep into the weeds and the details to figure out exactly how this is all working and what's good and what's bad. When we're communicating to stakeholders, we're probably not getting into that level of detail. And that is honestly just to have a productive conversation. Because if you get, anybody knows, if you're reporting out to stakeholders who aren't involved day to day with the actual activities you're doing, if you put out too much detail, good or bad, they are want to dig down deep on things to show that they are providing value and doing their due diligence, and that may not always be productive. You end up explaining basic things or anomalies that are not actually of any concern, or details that may seem strange to the uninitiated but aren't. So we use data in different ways when we're communicating to stakeholders. Obviously, let's be real. We're all usually trying to put our best foot forward in that situation. We want to use data honestly and ethically, and we want to be honest and ethical about our performance and explain it. But nobody's slanting the data to make themselves look bad in this kind of situation. Let's put it that way. Nobody's putting the worst case scenario into their report to their board or to their other external stakeholders. So when we're doing this, we need to present an accurate, but let's be honest, if not good, then at least if not a good sheen on the story, then one that at least reflects well on us and our ability to make the data reflect a better reality in the future. But it's really important, obviously, to back up the things we're saying about what a good job we're doing with data and numbers and measures that will demonstrate that. We are in this society at this point very used to the idea, I think, that subjective measures of performance are iffy. They're prone to bias and error, and objective measures, things that actually have a quantification to them, are better if they're well designed. I think we also all have some understanding that they can be noisy, they can be inaccurate, and they can be slanted and biased. Statistics and lies and all that. So having said all that, just to lay the groundwork for what we're trying to do with the DMO, with data as a DMO, we're trying to use the data again to make our actual operations, our promotions, our sales, our destination management better, and also to communicate what a good job we've been doing at those things to our stakeholders. So let's get into some actual data sources. So this is one. This is we call this Visitor Insights. This is a report that we built here at Simpleview. And this honestly is just processing and presenting data, location data from Azira, formerly known as Near. When you work with them, you get a nice spreadsheet. They do have some cool tools online, but we wanted to build a dashboard for our clients to make it easy for them to present and dig into this data. So we call it Visitor Insights. It could actually be run with other location services data sets as well. But I wanted to bring this one up first. It's been around for a couple of years now. People are getting used to the idea of device location data as a way to measure the real world impact of their marketing operations. It's the kind of thing, it's a data set that people's usage and understanding of it continues to evolve. So just to explain it real quick, if you're not familiar, I think, at TTRA, I'm pretty safe on everybody knowing what these things are. Nonetheless, just to make sure nobody's left behind, essentially, whenever you use your phone, as you well know, it has global positioning sensors in it. It is tracking and recording your actual physical position on the earth as you're using it. And many apps will, request this information from the phone when you do things on it, and will record that data in their tracking of your user activity on the app. A good example for this is things like, I don't know if Waze specifically is in this or that data set, but it's an example I've seen used before. Waze being, of course, the app that helps you route your driving so that you can go around traffic or avoid speed traps or what have you. So as you're using Waze, you are many times a second pinging your exact physical location to the app so that it can use that as it figures out where to send you next and where you are and all that. So that is the kind of time where you're using an app and you're sending off your physical location to the servers for that app all the time. So what happens is then those app makers have deals with companies like Azira to share anonymized versions of their data to Azira, who can then use that, aggregate all that location information from various apps and sell that out to not just destinations, but retailers, real estate developers, various other people who are interested in where people are physically going, to get really better data than the world has ever known, probably, on physically where people are. So with that, they have some nice data sets that tell us things like, they'll sell a data set that tells us where people are coming from when they come to the destination. So we can look at not only the devices that are in the destination, but where those devices spend their time in the evenings, which is a pretty good indication of where those people live. So we can take a look at that, and then we can start to look at things like, how much time do people spend depending on where their origin is in the destination, which points of interest do they go to in the destination when they're there. So it's actually really helpful because obviously that kind of data is a real world check on, this device, which represents a person, actually did physically move into our destination and spend some time here, and we know roughly how long that was. Really powerful. Couldn't used to get that before, except with like surveys or maybe somebody standing in a public place and counting how many people walked by. This is a lot better way to or a lot easier way, let's say, to sort of get at that. So you can see some of the metrics we calculate from this. We can look at the total number of overnight visits. We can look at the total number of day trip visits. And we can get the length of those things. We got the average length in days and hours of those trips. And we can do a year-over-year comparison of those sorts of things. We can also, again, look at where the devices spend their time overnight, and we can start to measure which locations sent visitors to us here. The column on the left that had the actual destination, source destination in it, is blacked out just to protect some anonymity in this data set. But yeah, we can start to look at not only which places sent users, but how that has changed over time, which ones are growing more or less. So obviously, then if we have a campaign targeting those areas, that's cool, because then we can start to look at relative growth in visits from that area and start to assess our effectiveness there. Another one that I think is really cool that we can do, and this is something that Azira makes it possible to do, is they provide a pixel that we can place on essentially any digital thing that we're using to promote our destination. Be that a website, just on a page view, be that on a particular link or button that people might click, or a form they might fill out on our websites, or even be that an ad that we place with a third-party platform, even just placing it on Google's content network or something like that. If it's a display ad, we can often include a tracking pixel along with that ad that will record, which devices viewed it. And so what we can do then is with these tracking pixels placed on these various things, we can record who does it, and then we can record specifically what they did and other information like, what channel brought them to our site, for instance, before they did it. And then we can connect all those devices that completed this action over to the people who actually showed up in the destination, the devices that actually showed up in the destination. And we can start to draw inferences about which of these different digital marketing activities or digital marketing initiatives that we had out there actually brought people physically into our destination, which is awesome. That is, you know, as you can see here, we had the tag placed on this client site, and we used it to track different things. You know, we had a run of site version of the tag, and then we had it on a different version on just a particular campaign landing page. And we had a different version on some hotel referral links. So then we can look at, you know, what is the difference in likelihood to visit of people who do those various things. We can look at what is the difference of place they go stay of people who do those different things. And then we can start to say, okay, well, you know, our campaign landing page actually produced this or that much lift in visitation, in spend, in whatever. And we can really get a lot closer than a lot of other data sources have allowed us to ever do to connecting those sorts of digital campaigns to real world things in a, you know, fairly direct way. It's pretty cool. And allows us to look at things like a window of, you know, when the last touch was to the visit, how long that takes, and so forth. Another cool thing we can do with this is look at, we can combine this data with data from your CRM or other meeting sales tracking software. So in this case, with this client, we have, you know, their CRM data of which convention center events were going on given dates. And then we have all this location data. So what we can do cool things like say, okay, let's take the dates for that event. You know, let's say it happened, what's today? August 27th. Let's say it was an event from August 27th to August 30th. So we can look at all the devices that were in the convention center on those, what is that, 4 days, if we were to use that as our example. And we can say, okay, of all those devices, where, which places to stay, which hotels were they seen in on the nights during, and then one before and one after that span. And then we can start to draw some inferences on not just, you know, the impact on room nights from the direct sales of room nights, you know, through our room block or whatever, but also, you know, where people who came to that event might have been staying somewhere else in the destination. You know, maybe they picked a different hotel. If we want to go and map out all the Airbnbs in the destination, then we can look at which ones of them might have been in those. And that way we can get a much more holistic view of the impact of lodging on lodging of various convention center events, and really expand the degree of benefit we're able to show to our stakeholders, which can help with conversations on that kind of thing. So that's a lot of the ins and outs and benefits of how, and ideas of how to use location data. There are actually many more applications. I've heard people talk about using it to figure out, you know, which parts of their destination were attracting audiences that were causing trouble for other parts of the destination, and then, you know, decrease their marketing of those things. But so the applications are endless. But I want to get into also talking about some of the challenges with this sort of data set. So it's pretty cool, you know, sounds almost like magic. We can read where people were in our destination, when they were there, where they came from, which particular places they went to. Really cool. Who wouldn't want that? But it turns out there are some things that make it difficult to draw perfectly clean conclusions from this data, and I'd like to talk about them. So what I'm showing you here is a screenshot from a white paper actually put out by Azira. So nothing you're going to see in here is slander. None of it is even something they haven't purposefully put out there for you. So the issue with this kind of location data is it tends to be highly variable. You see big shifts that happen over the course of a day in the total daily volume, and then are sustained for a while. And when you look at that, you start to doubt whether that's an actual increase in users, and maybe could instead be a difference in the amount of data coming into the system. And that indeed is the case. And so here is a little excerpt from a white paper that Azira put out earlier this year about dealing with these issues of shifting data volume and how to normalize it, as we say in data terms, That is how to get the noise out and try to figure out the real signal it's telling you about what the real world trend is. So this is a list really of things that can cause variance in the Azera data that do not represent, that can cause the volume of the data to change without reflecting a real world change in the activity we're trying to measure. So one is the first bullet. They are subject to decisions made by other people. They're essentially saying operating systems can change on mobile devices and thus restrict or change the amount of location data going out to the apps that they rely on for these data sets. A big one is regulatory changes. The EU especially has been leading the way on changing what data is automatically shared from devices, what data app makers are allowed to collect and store, and then what they're allowed to do with that data. At all times, there is this threat that some of these things can be taken away. Or even, like they say, the app publishers can change their strategies for collecting the data, whether they want to go through the hassle of selling it, all that kind of thing. And then also the app ecosystem can change a lot. So they mentioned, as an example here, about a year ago, the Google Play Store changed its API requirements and temporarily decreased data availability for a large number of them. Particularly in locations where Android is a bigger deal, that would even have a differential effect if you think about it. I don't have numbers on this, but I'm willing to bet that iPhone usage is higher, per device in the US than it is in some other countries. I'm an Android user myself, so I'm not denigrating anybody here. But if you think about that, if you have a difference in the concentration of iPhones versus Androids in different source markets for your destination, this kind of change is going to maybe make it look like there's a relative change in favor of more people coming to you from those iPhone type source markets that might not reflect reality at all. If it's just the matter of the Google Play Store causing Android devices to send less data into your location services data set temporarily. And then, as they say, it's just a complex thing they're doing. Sourcing this data involves working with a lot of different organizations. Those can change. And Azera themselves might decide to change the data, as they say here, to limit duplication. If a particular source seems to be lower quality, or just because, contractual or legal reasons, maybe they couldn't work out a deal with somebody anymore. So all of this contributes to what they call, this is again Azera's own words from their white paper, the high variance of Azera's data. And that can result in skewed consumer insights and poor machine learning model performance. While there's no perfect solution, they go on to, in this white paper, explain a lot of advanced statistical techniques for fixing these issues, addressing them. And I'm not going to go through all the details of those. That's not the purpose of this. I do encourage you, if you're interested in that level of detail, to go look it up in this Azera white paper. I believe it came out in like March of this year or something like that. But it's up there for anybody to look at. But basically, there are a bunch of different things we can do to, essentially you're making some mathematical assumptions about the numbers that allow you to straighten it out a little bit. And if you do all that, you end up with a result like this. So this is a chart from the same white paper. And this is just showing the number of visitors in a certain location seen in their data set on a daily basis from, as you can see here, 2019, the beginning of 2019 to the end of 2023. So that's a nice long 4-year period. So the blue line you're looking at here, the very spiky blue line, is the sort of baseline raw data of number of visitors seen in this particular physical location on a daily basis. So you can see highly spiky every day. That honestly looks like there is a weekly pattern with the very even width of the different spikes coming out there. And it looks to me like that cadence would work out to a weekly one as you try to eyeball the quarter hash marks with it down there. You can also see, look at on the left side of the chart, look at the big shift in daily volume happening around June of 2019. Suddenly the daily volume goes from, you know, in the 5 to 800 level to the 1,000 to 2,000 level. You know, the lowest day in the second half of 2019 is higher than the highest day in the first half of 2019. So is that real? Did the number of visitors in this location very quickly change in a permanent, sustained way? Or is that actually just a change in the data? Then you can see the huge trough in spring 2020 as everybody went home and everybody's device was spending more time at home than out doing stuff. And then you can see then it rebounds to a level that was lower than the baseline that it was at before the pandemic. That might be real and normal. But as you go along, you can see several sort of phase shifts in the data that show, you know, real sustained up-down jumps. You can see that 2023 lack of data from the Play Store hitting very hard there. And the overall result is that there are a bunch of, you know, very strong shifts in the overall volume of the data that may or may not represent actual real-world people changing. So with all the statistical techniques laid out in the white paper, with all the transformations on that data, the end result of them is taking that blue line you see and turning it into the red line, which, as you can see, is much more stable, much less variance on a day-to-day basis, and much less likely to believe it when there's a huge major shift in the baseline level of the data. You know, you can see it's above the baseline at the beginning when the baseline is very low, and it's below it at the end when it's very high. So it's essentially assuming that those are fake things, and that, you know, we should be using this, we should be changing those assumptions in order to measure things. On the other hand, you can see, you know, if you look right about in the middle where above where it says date in the, you know, June 2021 area, there is a trough there that it measures that looks kind of like one of these shifts in the baseline level of the line, but these techniques leave us thinking it's real. So, you know, the question I am left with is, okay, so we had what looks like a steady increase across these 4 years in the blue line. After all these techniques, the red line is showing very little actual daily increase. And if you read through all those things, there are kind of a lot of assumptions that lead us to that, this version of the line and to that conclusion. It's not cut and dried necessarily, whether all the assumptions apply or are real. A lot of it is just, you know, presuming that it can't be that real of a thing, and so then trying to smooth it out a little bit. And they say, you know, better than just making all these assumptions is to validate this data with some other data source that indicates what the true actual up-down trend should be. Which is interesting because, you know, it's essentially saying like, hey, the best way to measure the best way to validate this measurement of the thing, the real world phenomenon you're trying to measure here, is to have another way to measure it. So, you know, that is true. It is always good to have multiple ways to measure something because no metric is perfect. And it's good to have a backup way of looking at it. So none of this is to denigrate Azera data or saying it's not useful, or not just Azera, but location data in general, because again, this is all from their white paper and it's talking about the best ways to use it. It's all to say, this is a really cool data set that can give us a lot of interesting insights that were never possible before, but it cannot just be taken at face value. There's a lot of work we have to do to get the most useful information out of it, to understand it properly within context, and to you know, be able to draw real conclusions about it, whether we're communicating success to stakeholders or trying to just measure ourselves with the data, which I do want to highlight real quick here, some of the things we can do with this data. So one, for optimizing operations on the left, we can identify campaigns that actually attract visitors, really useful. You know, we're not just guessing. We're not just going off of visits to a campaign landing page that usually all bounce immediately. We're looking at real devices in our destination. We can evaluate the impact on all businesses, not just hotels, or on all hotels, not just the ones for our meeting that we sold. And we can manage destination traffic and sustainability. We can look at which roads are getting overrun. We can look at you know, which attractions are attracting too many people at the wrong time of day, or which, you know, districts might need more love to spread some of the volume out. from the various campaigns that we're doing. And then when we're communicating to stakeholders, we can demonstrate real direct visitation boosts. That's always nice. It's always great to say, hey, we generated 10,000 impressions or whatever. But what is an impression worth to somebody who runs a B&B? We can talk about, actual devices came in more, or more came in from a particular feeder market that we're looking at. We can estimate economic impact, in a more real way. We can look at how many people are actually coming to the destination. We can look at how long they're there. If we have an estimate of how much money they spend per day, great. Now we can make some claims about the estimated real impact of the visitors we brought with our campaigns to the destination. And we can explain community-wide benefits. Having this data set lets us talk about not just the direct stakeholders who got a booking from our website or something, but people who just had more device traffic, whether that be an ice cream shop or something like that, or whether it be we could use this data to show that we relieved congestion in a certain area with changes we made in our marketing or with our destination management. So lots of good messages we can back up with this data, provided that we understand its limitations and process it correctly and use it correctly to not just make a case, but hopefully draw an accurate picture. All right, so that was 40 of my minutes. I do want to hopefully leave some time in case there's any desire for chit chat at the end. Looks like we don't have any questions so far, so I will just keep rolling. But there are many other data sets that we can use. One of them is web benchmarking from GA4. So one of the great things about websites is that there is a universally, not quite universally, but largely widely used and accepted statistical measurement platform for it, which is Google Analytics. We're now on Google Analytics version 4. We've all been stuck on that for over a year now. We all should have switched over a couple years ago. Thanks to the fact that there is one standard measurement platform for websites, we are able to get apples to apples measurement comparisons from any website on any CMS. I mean, there are some differences, but it's a lot better than, say, email, where we have no such thing, where we're relying on metrics from that particular email provider that you have. And none of it is really like in the same source in the same format. And since Simpleview is fortunate enough to work with over 1,000 destinations worldwide, to have built the websites for several hundred destinations, we are able to get an industry-wide look at trends in web visitation. So this is just a view of a dashboard we built out that allows one DMO site to be compared to both its industry and or both its region, I should say, and the whole DMO industry, looking at just other DMO websites, which, metrics like even just visitation volume, but also engagement, conversion rates, those all vary widely from one type of website to another. A publisher is not going to be like an e-commerce platform, and neither one of those is going to be like a DMO. So by providing a benchmark of just DMO website data, we're able to provide a lot of context for a particular site's performance that can help look at things like, I'm down, is that good? Is that bad? Obviously being down is bad, but if everybody else is down worse, then maybe my performance is actually good. So here in these screenshots we're looking at, the green line at the top is showing year-over-year growth in all sessions to the website. And then the yellow line is the Midwest region, and the blue line is the overall DMO industry. So if you look at the overall period here, at the bar chart on the right, you can see that this site is down 7% overall, which is not great, particularly when the industry is up 15%. So that's quite a delta. If you go further down, you can see that the next row down is just looking at just organic search, which is about half of all DMO site traffic. There you can see they're much closer. They're at 2% growth. The overall industry is 3.5%. So within the ballpark there, and you can see other than one trough in the middle of the year, which honestly looks like a site error, or maybe somebody accidentally no-indexed the homepage or something like that. They're doing just fine, well above the industry in recent months, in fact. And if you go even further down, you can see that a large part of the decline is that their paid search budget is way down, whereas that is not the case for the industry. So A good example of where, looking at an overall number might be bad. Putting it in industry context helps, establish exactly how good or bad. But then starting to break down and drill down helps reveal reasons that will totally change the way you respond to this, depending on how you look at it. So, oh,
Paul, it looks like we do have a hand raised here.
oh,
I'm
cool.
going to give Kinsey permission. There we go.
Hello? I don't see anything written and I'm not hearing anything from anybody.
Yeah. Kinsey, are you there? If you have a question, we've got a good time for you now. Maybe we'll just hold off, go ahead and drop it in the chat, and we can answer it shortly.
Yep.
Thanks, Paul.
No problem. So that was looking at session volume growth. We can also, of course, look at engagement time and page use per session, conversion rate, other engagement metrics like this, which is, again, really helpful. Generally with, session growth, like we're looking at here, if it's up, you consider it good. If it's negative, you consider it down. Obviously, if the whole industry is down, you want to know that. But you can at least get, just positive or negative is going to give you some idea of whether things are good. With engagement time, it's really hard to tell. Like, people are on my site for 40 seconds on average. Is that good or is that bad? Well, again, highly variable by industry. So it's really useful to have a benchmark that will let you look at yourself in context and try to figure that out. Because an e-commerce platform is definitely going to be different on this kind of metric in a vast way than, say, a publisher. Other interesting things we can do in our data set, we keep track of what the URL is for each of the 500 plus DMO sites in our data set. We keep track of what the URL is for various common DMO topics. So things to do, events, hotels, restaurants, outdoors, meetings. We were doing COVID pages for a while because that was really important. Also the visitor guide request page, the URL of the blog, and then the URLs where we can identify their event detail pages and their listing detail pages. So with that, we're able to collect all these metrics from the web, session growth, engagement, engagement rate, conversion rate, all those nice things. And we're able to break them down by which type of content the user landed on, whether it's the main things to do page or a listing detail or things like that. And that I think is really useful because now we can start to look at, okay, my growth is down for the year. What is it doing by page? And you might see, oh, my things to do page is actually up, but my events page has lost almost all its traffic. And events pages are huge for DMOs. And it looks like the industry overall is still getting all its traffic from events pages. That's where I need to focus. Or, my engagement is below the average. But looking at this, it turns out my blog has really poor engagement. We also like to make all of these data sets filterable by the channel because it makes a huge difference whether somebody comes to your site by organic search or via, social media. How much time they're going to, or display is a great example. How much time they're going to spend on the site, what actions they're likely to perform. So with all those things, you can start to get real apples to apples comparisons between your DMO site and others. And I think having this kind of benchmarking available is one of the most important ways you can, start to analyze your performance. Oh yeah, here we go into some of the dimensions we like to include. I mentioned channel, so that's like, what type of site brought them to your site. The content topic. We also like to look at device type, again, especially with engagement. Huge difference in the amount of time people will spend on your site, whether they're on a mobile device or a desktop. It's usually like double the engagement time for desktop devices, which is too bad because there are twice as many mobile sessions on our sites as desktop ones. And also geo-segment. We're able to look at in Google Analytics, they record what city the user came to you from. So we're able to look up how far away that is from your destination and then figure out, take an estimate of whether they're a drive visitor, a fly visitor, or just a local in-market visitor. And then, we have other types of web data sources as well. Another one that is common across websites is Google Search Console. If you've signed up for that, which everybody should, they'll give you data on which keywords your site appeared for, what the average rank was, and how many clicks you got. And that's super helpful because there are many keywords that apply across destinations. So like events in X, or things to do in X, or X hotels, whatever your destination name is, people probably search that. There will be some other idiosyncratic keywords, but those will generally be popular in any US destination. If you go to the UK, it changes from events to what's on, so the phrasing changes by the local dialect, but those topics are going to be popular regardless. So we are able to track, again, thanks to all the sites we work with, industry standards for which keywords people are ranking for, what the average position is. And as you can see from this, if you map the average industry position for, say, the events keyword, it's like average number 4 for a DMO site, which is, lower is better. We want to be as close to 1 as we can. But if you map it out for hotels, so, like I'm in Tucson, this keyword would be like Tucson hotels, Tucson AZ hotels, etc. The average position is more like 12 to 14 in the period we're looking at here. So huge difference from one keyword to another, and very important for contextualizing your performance, your rankings, the quality of your content, the quality of your site, the quality of your SEO. If you're able to put your ranking against the industries when you're analyzing it, and then be able to look at it over time, like we're looking at here, to see how it's shifting, whether things are getting better or worse. We can also do some similar things with email benchmarking. We work with over 100 DMOs on their email marketing using our partner Acton, and we're able to collect that data on common metrics like open rate, click to open rate, click through rate, opt out rate, and then we're also able to see, if you look on the right there, we're able to break it down by the audience they're sending that email to, whether it's member, partner, consumer, media, PR, planners, etc. Because these metrics are going to differ, but according to the audience, your consumers are definitely not going to act like your members and partners with your emails. Then we're able to show, your performance versus the industries, and again, show a much better and more useful view of how these things are going to work. Here again, you see a way we can start to break down these metrics by the different audiences you might be sending them to, and you can see that there is quite a bit of variance. And it looks like we blocked out, this is probably click to open rate or something like that. But you can see there is quite a bit of variance depending on the audience you're sending it to. Pay-per-click, yet another place where benchmarking is super valuable. And again, we're able to collect that and start to show performance. So, cost per click on Google Ads and click-through rate, these are things that I think it's really useful to get an idea of, in this particular case, this client is paying, nearly 2.5 times the industry cost per click. Now, they would want to then look at, which type of keywords they're going after. If you're going after lodging keywords, that's going to cost you a lot more than going after events keywords. You may have good strategic reasons for having a higher cost per click, but you still want to know what that delta is. You want to see, if you make changes in your campaign strategy, if that shows up in your cost per click. If a rise in your cost per click is just matching a change in the overall conditions that's affecting the rest of the industry. This is really useful to be able to do that. And then lastly, event sales, meeting sales benchmarking. We have our thickest data set really is CRM meeting sales data. And so we're able to look at the changes in, lead generation volume year over year, and then actual booking year over year, both in terms of the number of leads and in the average room nights. And then we're able to give people the ability to look at that and look at it not just overall, but looking at the market segment, because we classify which market segment all these meetings go into. Looking at the whether the leads are coming for a convention center or just a hotel, and looking at the size of the convention center and each of these destinations. These are all different ways that we can make the comparison more refined and accurate and useful, and benchmark our job of delivering leads to the sales team, and then the sales team's job of actually booking those into events in the destination. All of this super helpful if we're trying to make a good case for ourselves as having a good job, or if we're just trying to do a better job and understand how we're doing. So how can we use all this benchmarking for the two goals of DMO data, optimizing operations and communicating to stakeholders? On the operations side, we can differentiate our performance from industry trends. We can understand if our growth is really excellence or merely average, if our declines are a failure on our part or merely an industry-wide issue. We can use filters to generate normalized comparisons. We can say, all right, my engagement is poor, but is it just because I'm doing more display advertising, which gets lower engagement rates? If I look at myself against the industry on just organic search traffic, this will give me a much better idea of whether it's the design of my site that's causing the issue or not. And it allows us to find which campaigns move the needle on reach and engagement. Then when we're communicating to stakeholders, this allows us to establish success even in a downturn. Huge deal. A lot of all this stuff I got into during the pandemic when everybody's numbers were obviously vastly down. And so it became important to put them into context with the rest of the industry to show like, hey, it's not us, it's the industry. Don't kill us. We're doing our best here. It also can help enhance your credibility. You're not just saying, hey, we're getting, we had 500 impressions on our campaign landing page. Now we can put that in context of what the rest of the industry was doing and establish that it really was anomalous and good, if that's the case. And also explaining wider industry trends. A lot of times we're talking to our stakeholders about people who don't know what's going on in tourism, don't understand that there might be this or that regulatory issue or this or that economic slowdown that's causing problems. Having the right data, having this benchmarking data can help make the case to them of what's going on in broader trends that they need to be aware of. Ooh, I do see a Q&A coming in. Do I have trend data on website, physical visitor guide, and virtual visitor guide requests over time? For the industry overall, are they up or down moving from physical to virtual or vice versa? I can say that I have data showing that they are very rare. They're obviously down since the 90s. They were already kind of down by the time I got into this industry and probably down more. I don't have specific data over the long term on that. I'm working on putting together a study on that for the past few years, but it's not going to go back before really 2 years before GA4 became the standard web implementation thing. But I can certainly tell you that they are not common and they are becoming less so. And a lot of destinations have moved to virtual only for that reason. But I did include the visitor guide page things in the, there it is. If you look in the bottom middle-ish, the green chart, that is showing the percentage of site traffic that lands on the visitor guide request page, which obviously that's a destination page, not really a landing page. But it helps give us an idea still of the volume. And you can see that it's the pale line for the industry is hovering between 0.2% and 0.6% of all traffic lands on that page. At least I forget what filters I might have had on here, but it's not a lot. The big landing pages are really the home page, things to do, events. You can see all those up there. Or even, those are all getting, things to do is in the 10 to 15% range across destinations. So quite a bit less traffic on the visitor guide page. There's some more stuff I want to do on that. Okay, I only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to blast through the last section, which is a more advanced statistical investigation of data that I think is cool. So real quick, we have a meeting sales consulting arm at Simpleview called 2Synergize. And that team over there came to me with the desire to investigate what we could figure out about compression in the destination overall. Compression being getting to a certain threshold of room nights sold. Usually we look at 90–95% on that, above which it is theorized that the daily rate will skyrocket across the destination because there's no room. Everybody's trying to stay there. And hoteliers will be very happy because they will be getting a lot of money for their fixed volume on that particular date. And so we wanted to look at the question of DMO citywide sales strategy, how much that increases the likelihood of compression in the destination on a certain date, which obviously it will. You're filling up volume, you're selling rooms. That helps get us towards the 90% just directly. But no DMO or few DMOs are selling out the whole city at a time. Even if they do, it's only going to be for a few dates. That's not going to be an everyday type of thing. So we want to look at what the normal DMO contribution on a particular day might be towards generating compression with their meeting sales activities. So to do that, we combined their CRM data on what they were booking on each particular day with their Smith Travel Research data on overall occupancy for the destination and overall daily rate for the destination. I don't have time to properly explain these charts, but we did a cool regression analysis. It involves some fairly sophisticated techniques because we're bound between 0 and 1 on things like occupancy. To figure out, okay, if the DMO sells a certain number of rooms, as you see on the x-axis here, as we go right, we're selling more rooms on a particular date. What is the likelihood of compression, of reaching over 90% on that particular date? And that's the green and red lines. Let's just focus on the green line, which is all days, as opposed to the red line, which is just weekdays. So the green line is showing that as you move right, as you sell more rooms, you are what is the green line is telling you if you sell rooms X, what is the chance of that day being compressed according to the star data we have here. And so you see if they sell 0 rooms all the way on the left there at a certain day, the likelihood of compression in the destination on that day is like 8%. Whereas if they sell 5,000 rooms, they are just a little over 50% likelihood to have compression. So that's a real impact that the DMO can have if they sell several thousand rooms on a given day. It really does get more likely that there's compression, which is something good that they can then say to their stakeholders about the impact of their activities. As you can see, if you look at the dots there, which represent the actual data points of requested rooms versus occupancy, the problem is there aren't that many days you're selling 5,000 rooms. So this helped us formulate a strategy for this destination of targeting a larger per day per day number of room nights, and helped shift the strategy from sprinkling a few room nights on all dates to, if you can, concentrate all the sales on one day, because that's going to actually give you compression up to about 4,000 to 5,000 room nights. And then beyond that, maybe you do want to start to spread it around because you're already going to compress. And why do overkill? We also use this to show that, as requested rooms goes up, so does RevPAR, revenue per available room for that destination. Just because sometimes people claim that, the DMO sells rooms, sure, but they do it on dates that are already filled and they're selling them for cheap. So we are actually reducing the revenue. When you look at the data, there's basically no evidence for that. So that's a nice argument to have. And as I hit 12 on the dot and I'm about to get kicked off, I would just say one of the cool things you can use this data for, on operations side, you can identify optimal daily sales targets, filter to the correct leads to pursue, and shape overall destination and sales strategy. And then for the stakeholders, you can show the impact of events beyond direct bookings. We're talking about actual compression, how that we increase the ADR for them across their other rooms. You can establish a shared definition of success, and you can advocate for sales activities. So key takeaways: DMO effectiveness is inherently difficult to measure. It's clear that we're doing something, but these advanced data sources can help connect travelers to marketing and sales efforts. So that really helps us do a much better job of talking about our, hard to describe, hard to understand things like impressions, and turn them into metrics like that, turn them into real world spending and visitation things. And data can, as we're doing that, help tell a story to stakeholders. So thank you. I appreciate all your time, including the 2 extra minutes. And I'm going to turn it back over to Elsie to finish us off.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you all for attending today. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Paul's contact information is on the screen here, and you can always contact TTRA